Europeans have read it. What do Americans have every day that you see as a luxury?
Space. America is fucking enormous.
The massive houses. A special room just for your massive washer and dryer units. 2-car garage. Basically, you have tons of space.
Big kitchens and big refrigerators, freezers. Even in my student apartment, we had a pretty good-sized kitchen. I was dating a Czech girl, and her parents came to visit. When they went to my apartment for a dinner, the mom was just amazed at the size of my fridge. They were amused when I dumped the scraps in the sink and turned on the garbage disposal. They'd heard about it, but had never seen one.
The size of your homes in places like Utah and Texas, there's a dedicated room for everything. Kids' playroom that isn't the living room or the kids' bedroom, walk-in pantry room, a laundry room.
Space Roomland.
Free refills.
Air conditioning. Americans pump it all summer long.
Extensive national parks.
Used to be 24-hour stores and restaurants. That went away with COVID.
The 2 most peaceful neighbors ever.
The space. I'm a Canadian who just returned from a trip visiting Grand Canyon, Zion, and Vegas. Our last few trips were in Europe. As mentioned elsewhere, drink refills and plentiful bathrooms clean too were a nice change. The American National Park system just blows all others out of the water, including Canada's. I'm especially embarrassed about BC's provincial parks. People love to complain that tourists are gross, but the American parks were just as busy, but actually had maintained facilities and people who, work to maintain the parks. I didn't see any TP on any of the trails in the U.S. Meanwhile, I have PTSD from Garibaldi trails last summer.
The backyards and front yards. The size of the garages. The huge living rooms.
Free public toilets.
Handicap accessibility. I required the use of a wheelchair for a few years. During that time, we visited Spain and Italy. It was an absolute nightmare trying to navigate public spaces. My husband made sure that our apartment in Rome had an elevator, as it was on the 3rd floor. However, when we arrived, we discovered that there was 2 flights of stairs in order to access the elevator. We managed, but it was a very difficult trip for us.
American here visiting Germany right now. I'm going to go out on a limb and say fuel cost. The station down the road here sell petrol for €1.75 liter. That's about $7.20 gallon if my math is correct. For comparison, I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, and just paid $2.85 per gallon last week, which is about €0.75 liter. Gas is even cheaper than that in the Midwest U.S.
Air conditioners. It's hot here in Spain. Edit. I'm referring row, the type of AC that is like whole house AC. I have a window AC, and yeah, everyone has those. But I haven't seen many centralized AC units where I am. Should have been more specific, sorry.
Steak is way cheaper in USA.
The sport facilities in high school movies. 10 Things I Hate About You, for example. It must be amazing and super cuzzy to play in those places with the whole school cheering on a Friday night, kissing the cheerleader after scoring a touchdown. In Europe, you play on some shitty random soccer field with a random team in front of 7 parents and 1 alcoholic. No connection to anything or any money invested in anything unless you play for the best team in the city. But by then, we are talking about the biggest teams that you see in Champions League, Europa League, and other European tournaments. And that's 1,015 years old who plays for those teams.
Europeans cannot comprehend how much better American-vented clothes dryers are. There is a reason nobody in the U.S. line dries their clothes. American dryers dry everything perfectly on low temperature, unlike ventless dryers which just kind of heat the clothes up. The dryer in the average American home is better than the ones in Europeans' laundromats.
I'm Australian, but I will say the college culture. IDK if what we see in American shows and movies is true. But here in Australia, if you want to further your education, you go to a university after high school, you go to your classes and leave. There's barely any universities that are even sport-oriented, despite us being one of the greatest sporting nations. In America, it seems like they have so much pride and culture surrounding their colleges, with big bands and such.
For me, it's 3 things. How spacious everything is. Like homes, roads, parks, etc. The low level of population density, how cheap gas and cars are.
24/7 hot water. Lots of older places especially have hot water on timers to limit energy use.
Instead of sealed insulated cylinders, they used open-air cisterns in the attic. Garages. Closets. Really storage space of any kind. Home hobbies are much rarer for it, as there's nowhere to have a workshop. Even Christmas decorations are comparatively rarer for want of places to store them. Outlets in the bathroom. Can't dry your hair in there. Edit for clarity. This is Ireland, similar to UK. Storage and outlet issues are true even in new builds. Hot water cisterns haven't been a thing in decades, but the housing stock is old and many places haven't yet been upgraded. Even where they have, timers are ingrained and electricity expensive, so they're still common.
Wawa. My American husband always went on about it, how he'd love to just drive to Wawa. I never got it until we spent Thanksgiving with his parents. Bring Wawa to the UK, please.
Their streets are always so wide. But here in Düsseldorf, I know many little streets where I have to vanish into a parking space when I'm on my bike and a car wants to pass, because otherwise they physically can't.
OP, Europeans have read it. Americans. I'm not European, but I'd say...
Their high salaries and low taxes.
Why are so many people mentioning free public restrooms in the States? Do they charge to use the bathroom in Europe?
Probably not luxury, but I feel like it's easier to get rich, but also higher risk to become very poor homeless. Everything seems a bit more extreme than it does here. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I have some friends from North Carolina who moved to the Netherlands for 7 years, and one thing they said they really missed was selection. Europeans, or at least the Dutch, don't have nearly as many things to choose from. My friends said you'd walk into a Dutch Best Buy, and they'd have 2 Blu-ray players, a $600 one and a $50 one, because Dutch people either want to buy the best or buy the cheapest. Same with TVs. It was either top-of-the-line Philips 4K HDR or it was Hisense.
Gas and power prices.
My European GF asked me one day, over Messenger as I was in the US and she was in Europe, why do Americans bother having electric can openers? It seems lazy. I told her to take a pic of her can opener and send it to me. 3 or 4 minutes go by and no pic. She comes back to say she cannot find it at the moment. I then asked her how often she'd lose something the size of an electric one.
American fridge.
Space. So much space. Even in crowded cities, you get parking when going grocery shopping. Your houses and plots are gigantic. Not in all parts of the USA, of course, but still the freedom to have more decision on what your money is used for. Comes with negatives as well as some stuff costs money that shouldn't, or at least not as much. Healthcare, for example. To have this in Europe, you need to migrate to Switzerland, which is not easy food portions at restaurants large enough, so I actually am no longer hungry after eating. I'm an average-sized 75-kilo dude, but eating out is easily 30 euro for me alone, and I still need a kebab afterwards.
AC and ice.
Guns.